Greetings. It's good to see you here. Um, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Community Senior Center. I'm Jane Vossler, and I'm so happy to have Barry Estabrook here with us today. Um, he's had a varied writing career, writing for food magazines such as what he calls the late lamented Gourmet Magazine, which I think is a great way to describe it. Saveur, Epicurious, the New York Times. He's written at least 3 books, maybe 4, right?
Three books on food. Yeah.
On food. Pigtails, which he's talking about today, Tomatoland, and another one called Just Eat. He has a blog that's called Politics of the Plate. And that blog won a James Beard Award for the best food blog a few years ago. He has 30 acres of land in Vermont where he has a big vegetable garden and some laying hens and makes some maple syrup. And I heard he makes some hard cider occasionally. So we're very happy to have you, Barry. Welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Jane. Appreciate it. Appreciate all of your interests in hearing this, because how food is produced is something that's very important to me. And I think that Americans in general just don't understand enough about how what we eat is produced and its ramifications. So most of my career has been spent doing just that, investigating how food is produced and how it's really produced. And that can get scary sometimes. When you lift back the curtain and see what's going on. When I told my wife that I was going to look into the whole issue of pigs and industrial scale pork production, she looked at me very sternly and said, "This better not mean I have to give up bacon." And so I spent the next couple of years researching and writing this book to find out if we would have to give up bacon in order to live with our conscience. Understand it, to understand what you're eating. It's not like it's a turnip. It's a sentient animal, whether it's a chicken, a cow, or whatever. And I think we all realize that, most people realize now, that pigs are not stupid. In fact, pigs are very smart. They are by far and away the smartest, the most intelligent, the most sensitive animal we raise for food. They're also probably the most intelligent and sensitive domestic animal we have, including cats, dogs, everything. They're incredible animals. And I really had no inkling how smart they were and how sensitive they were until I started to research this book. I'll explain what this pig is up to a little later, but early on in my research, I met a woman who was then working a professor at Purdue University, a big ag school in Indiana, and her name was Candace Croney. And it's interesting. She was born in Trinidad and came with her family at a young age to the States. Was the first member of her family to go to university in the States. Took up animal science because she loved everything to do with all animals except pigs. She hated pigs. For religious reasons, her family never ate pork, and she just thought of pigs as stupid, dumb, dirty, filthy animals. But she got her bachelor's and master's degree and was at loose ends when she was approached by a professor named Stanley Curtis, who was one of the biggest figures in the study of animal intelligence, livestock animal intelligence and cognition. This was in the mid 1990s. And here Candace was sort of loose ends, not knowing she has a master's degree, she doesn't know what she's going to do, and she gets approached by this dignified, austere professor who invited her to do a doctorate program with him. And she was elated. And then he told her what she would have to do. To get her doctorate, she was going to have to teach pigs to use a computer. She told me, she says, she sat there with her mouth open, waiting for the punchline to be delivered. But it never came. And so she was given a project where she had to, just, as you can see, just a standard pink commercial piglet, and train them to use a computer. So she got these piglets into the laboratory. It was a big, spacious, living room-sized area, far from a pig pen. And she got them there, and they were sort of like any group of incoming kindergartners. They had to, first of all, be kind of socialized before they could learn. I mean, after all, they were pigs. And so step one was to house train the pigs, or laboratory train them, if you will. And that proved to be a snap. These piglets immediately designated one tiny corner of the room as their lavatory, and never, ever did any of their business elsewhere. So they could be, there was nothing to clean up after them. And they did that after one or two tries, way faster than any dog would ever figure out how to do that. She wanted the pigs to have an enhanced environment so that they would be, not bored stiff. And so she gave them toys to play with, balls to smash around, ropes to tug on, even just some of the standard toys that you would give a dog. But she enforced rules that any mother of a child would or grandmother would, or grandfather would love to enforce. First of all, the rule was she had a big box of toys. And the rule was that the pig could take any toy it wanted, play with it, but it had to put that toy back before it could take another toy out. They did this to keep the pigs from getting bored. But it was interesting, and they were graduate students, and eager to get to wherever graduate students go at the end of a school day. And so they also trained the pigs to clean up after themselves. So the pigs at the end of the day would put everything back into the box. Their pen would be ready to go, and they never failed. They learned it quickly, and they never failed. So it was on to the computers. She first of all got some students in the engineering department to jerry-rig a standard IBM computer. It was put behind plexiglass. You can sort of see it just in front of the pig's nose. The computer's behind this plexiglass. And this was in the days when computers had joysticks, game consoles, except a pig would smash that apart. So she had the engineers put a tractor gear shift knob on top of what would have been a joystick so the pig could sort of root it and push it around. And the game was that the pig had to push that lever right in front of its mouth there, if you can see it, to move if you look at the computer screen, again, just in front of the pig on the left-hand side, to move that little white spot toward a target. So they figured that out. They figured that if they could push this, nudge the knob, that white spot would move, and the goal was, and this was to push it over into a white area. And they quickly figured that out. And as a reward, there was a little machine across the room that spat out some M&Ms. Turns out pigs love M&Ms. If you ever want to win the heart of a pig, give it some M&Ms. And what she did was, as they learned, she kept making the target area, the white stripes you see, smaller and smaller and smaller until they were no bigger than a dime. And the pigs learned how to hit that target every time to get their M&Ms. Now you've got to realize that this is an incredibly complex experiment, especially for a pig. I mean, think about it. In its natural habitat, if a pig sticks its nose in the ground, roots in the ground, and encounters an acorn, the acorn is right there in front of it at that moment. But what these pigs had to figure out was, if I push that knob, it will make something on that screen move. And if I push it so that it moves into a target area, that dispenser way across the room will give me an M&M. It's a very complex piece of thinking, the cognition that the pig was able to do. Dog couldn't do that. A cat couldn't do that. Pigs had no trouble. They all passed. And eventually Crony got her PhD and dedicated it to the pigs. It's interesting, I was at the University of Pennsylvania a couple of years ago at their pig lab, and they have a similar thing going on, except the pigs now have a touch screen. So the pigs have upgraded from the old joystick era. She did other experiments that showed that pigs were unusually smart, way smarter than people had realized. She had students, or her students, grad students, come into the pig encounter either carrying a wooden block shaped like an X or an O. And the people carrying the X's would give the pigs a treat. The people carrying the O's never would. Eventually, the pigs didn't pay any attention to the people with the O's, but they'd come running to the people with the X's. And remember, this is a three-dimensional block that these people were carrying. Well, she changed it up and put the X's and the O's on T-shirts. So again, this is a totally different thing. The pigs figured that right out. So they could transform a solid object into, a two-dimensional image, three-dimensional. They could understand that. It got even better. The pigs, she discovered, have what psychologists call a sense of self. It's something that very few animals have, and it's usually the higher. Humans have it, chimpanzees have it, dolphins have it, but pigs have a sense of self too. And what a sense of self means is it's your ability to look at another person, or in this case, another pig, and put yourself in their shoes and make decisions based on what that person might do. So you're going inside their head, basically, and saying, well, if I were that person, this is what I would do. Sense of self. And it turns out pigs have that. They did an experiment where they kept two pigs together, one big, mean, bossy pig and another little subordinate pig. And they let the pigs out of their cage into a room. The little pig, first of all, it was a little pig. And there were 8 containers of food, or eight containers in the room, only one of which had food. And the little pig would go in and, just as you'd expect, look in each container and eventually spot the one with the food. Then they put the pig out again and left it for a day or so and brought it back in and went directly to the container with the food. It hadn't forgotten, didn't bother with the others, didn't mill around, just trotted right over and got the food. And then they played a dirty trick on the poor little pig. Remember, this is a little submissive pig. And they put the pig in the room and let the big pig come in with it. And so the little pig trotted over and got its treat, and the big pig did the sort of meandering around and not, wondering what was, until it, just hit or miss. Until they had done that a few times. And the big pig all of a sudden learned, wait, that little guy, he knows something I don't. So the big pig wouldn't meander around. He would wait until the little guy went toward a bucket of food, the bucket that had the food, and then he would race over and bump the little pig out of the way and eat all the food. Story doesn't end there, though, because the little pig got wise to this and stopped going directly to the food. Little pig would just go in and kind of saunter around, and so the big pig would have to start hunting to find the food. When the big pig got a distance away, the little pig jumped in and got the food. Again, putting itself into the big pig's mind, saying, here's what he's going to do. My favorite story was, though, every year the university had the agricultural school had a visiting day. And all the parents brought their children to see the trained pigs. And the grad students, mischievously, would challenge 3 or 4-year-old kids to play this game versus a pig. And the pig would win. And all these parents, these doting parents would do, what? My kid isn't as smart as a pig. And so, it shouldn't have surprised the parents, because British researchers, Donald Broome at Cambridge, has done cognition studies on pigs. And a pig has the cognitive ability, the mental capacity of a 3-year-old child, 3-year-old human child. They're that smart. They have incredible memories. Pigs personally know as many as 80 other pigs and never forget them. They know them, they know their personalities, they know what they do, they know how to deal with them. They know 80 other pigs. People in that depth know between 1 and 200 other humans that really know, not just like Facebook friends, but people you really know. So pig is in our sort of category as far as remembering people and their traits. A friend of mine named Cy Montgomery kept a pet pig. His name was Christopher Hogwood, for you music fans. And this pig eventually became a 700-pound giant, but he was a very friendly pig to most people. And he had different grunts for everybody. When Cy, his owner, came, he had a certain grunt tone, and when 2 little girls who lived next door came to play with him, he grunted differently, and so on. But everybody had a different greeting. He gave everybody a slightly different greeting. And Cy, his owner, had this enormously obese friend who doesn't visit often, but one day the obese friend came, and Christopher the pig took one look at him, came running over to get his head scratched, and issued this very specific series of gurgles and oinks. It was like he'd witnessed a fellow corpulent person, or comrade in corpulence. So that happened once, and then a couple of years went by. The guy didn't visit. He lived a distance away, and he came back, and the pig immediately shot over to him to get an ear scratch and issued the same sound. Remembered the guy, had a special voice for him. In some advanced modern industrial pig barns, the pigs have chips computer tags in their ears. And what those tags do is they open the door to a feeding station, just enough so that one pig can come in, and then they close the door so the pig can eat in peace. And the chips are set so that the doors will only open once a day. So once the pig has had its feed for the day, it can go, the door won't open for it. Well, pigs have learned that should one of those chips fall off onto the floor, if you pick that up, you can go back and chances are good that the door will open again. So they've learned that. A farmer I met in Iowa was out in his pasture one day, and a big sow came over to him and started to nudge him and push him back toward the barn. He wondered what was going on. And he thought, oh, maybe she has piglets and she wants me to see them. So he kind of pushed her back or followed her back to the barn. And piglets were fine. He sort of looked at her and said, well, nice piglets, but I got work to do. And she pushed him again and pushed him again over to the wall where there was a watering spigot, an automatic water spigot. And she tried to activate it, and it didn't work. And he realized what she'd done was gone out in the field to get him, bring him back and say, hey, the water dispenser is on the blink, which is smart enough in itself, except he realized she had never seen him fix a water sprinkler or anything. She somehow knew that, he's a handy guy, I guess I'll see what he can do. But she had to make that judgment. It keeps going on and on what they are. And when you think about it, though, it's probably understandable because pigs and humans have been, especially culturally, evolved together for years, for thousands of years. Pig, aside from the dogs, was the very first domestic livestock. Before horses, before cows, before chickens, before goats, before sheep, pigs were number two. Dogs, they go way back in time, but pigs were number two. And in fact, we domesticated pigs at about the same time, about 11,000 years ago, when we first settled down in permanent communities, gave up nomadic life, and started agriculture. And researchers think that one of the reasons that those people were able to do that was in what is part of present-day Turkey, was because they domesticated pigs. Once you settled down, you become vulnerable to things like crop failures or droughts or whatever, diseases. But if you have a pig hanging around or a litter of pigs, it's like an insurance policy. If the crops fail, you've got pork. And that's what they think happened. They think that these first farmers somehow domesticated, got a baby pig or something, a wild boar was what it was. The same species, interestingly. A pig is the same as a wild boar. In fact, if you take any pig, and put it in the woods and let it go, it can revert to the wild, even if it's an industrial farm pig. But anyway, it probably brought baby wild boars in, and the females would stay around just because they were getting scraps and garbage and whatnot, and would have babies. And so that people could, eat those babies in times of need. So they really did help us make, the biggest moves of our lives. That's from being hunter and gatherers to being farmers. And let's say, couldn't have done that. Thank a pig every time you eat, because that's why we're not roaming around with clubs and spears. when it came time for Europeans to settle this continent, again, pigs made it possible. Couldn't have done it without pigs. Christopher Columbus, not many people know this, but he actually carried 13 pigs aboard his boats when he made his first voyage to America. He let them out in what's now the Dominican Republic, and they eventually just overran the island, went wild and overran the island, which wasn't a bad thing, because all the future explorers knew that if you pulled up to the Dominican Republic, or what is now the Dominican Republic, you could send a hunting party in there and fill up your larder after crossing the ocean with these gone wild pigs. When De Soto made his famous, the Spanish explorer made his famous journey across the Mississippi and through the American Southwest, he had 700. He left with 700 pigs, 1,200 men and 700 pigs. After 2 or 3 years, when they returned, he still had 700 pigs, but they'd been eating pork the whole time. So it was like a portable food supply for these explorers that were opening up this continent. These pigs, as useful as they were not particularly pretty. That thing's it's about half the size of what you think of as a pig. This is what the original pigs looked like. Looks a lot like a wild boar. You can see the similarities. This is, in fact, it's called an Asabao pig. They still exist. And they were found on an island off Georgia, the state of Georgia, where another Spanish explorer had done just what Columbus did. He dumped a bunch of pigs off on the island so that, if he came by there again, or if another Spaniard came by, there would be meat. And those pigs stayed undisturbed right up to now. And so these Asabao pigs are the original pig before we started breeding them for, being huge factory raised things. The young country, America, United States, during the Winter of Valley Forge and the Revolutionary War, our soldiers were much healthier than British soldiers, stronger, better. They came through the winter fine because people brought pigs. These wild, half-wild pigs. We brought them, so the Americans ate well during the winter, and that enabled them to fight well once the battles began again. When it came time to settle the West, again, settlers couldn't do it without pigs. Think of it. You had to clear land and plant crops, and that you can't do that in a season or a year. It takes time. But what they would do would be take pigs with them. And pigs are incredibly fecund. A sow, even then, would give 2 litters a year of 10 each, so 20 piglets. And they grow up really quickly. They get slaughter size in less than 6 months. So you could see how a pioneer, with a couple of pregnant sows, could have a guaranteed food supply while he went the business of clearing the land, planting the crops, building his cabin, whatever. I mean, you think of all the things that pigs have done for this country and for humans, but think of it and ask yourself, what has the bald eagle ever done? And you'll think maybe pigs should be our national animal. I would vote for it anyway. But this whole thing is what the famed animal rights expert or welfare expert Temple Grandin called the ancient contract between pigs and humans. And the deal was this: pigs would give us food. In exchange, we would feed them, protect their babies, and let them live a pretty decent life. But we broke this agreement starting about 30 years ago when we took pigs off pasture and put them in these horrible, concentrated animal feeding operations. The smart, sensitive animal. This is how they're raised today. 97% of the pigs in this country grow up in buildings like this. These are growing pigs in these pictures. A sow, a female pig, has it even worse off. Most sows in industrial farms are raised in crates, gestation crates. The only problem with this picture is it's too clean. Someone has cleaned up, the mess a bit, but this is how a sow, 400 or 500 pound animal, spends her entire life. She can't move, she can't turn around. They just are kept in these little crates, barely big enough, to hold the sow. In fact, not really big enough, because you can see the third or fourth pig back where there's a little abrasion on the skin. That's from rubbing against the bush. She's too big for the pen that she's kept in. That's the skin rubbing against the bars. Temple Grandin, again, the livestock welfare expert, says it's like being condemned to live your whole life in an airplane seat. I beg to differ. Airplane seats are more comfortable than that. And if you're in an airplane seat, you can get up and walk the aisle or go to the bathroom or read a magazine. These pigs have nothing. These clever animals that can, play with toys and that know everybody, that are smart as 3-year-olds, that's how they live. Some of them literally go crazy. This is what happens when they have their babies. Again, they're not out of the crate. These little bars the babies can go over there so they don't get rolled on. But again, she's living, that's how she spends her whole life. You'll notice that the floor in front of her feet and everywhere is slatted. See how that's slatted? Below that, there's essentially a cement basement. And what happens is all of the excrement, all of the manure, all of the urine goes through those slats, often by just being pushed through by the pig's feet, and is allowed to build up there for a year at a time. It'd be like you filling your basement with all of your excrement and just living on top of it. The fumes are poisonous, and so the only way these pigs survive is, first of all, the pig barn is vented with a thing that looks like a giant jet engine that just keeps air blasting through in order that they don't asphyxiate. The other thing that they have to do with the pigs in this condition is feed them a constant low dosage of antibiotics. It's the equivalent of you giving your child an antibiotic every morning before she goes off to school, even if she's not sick. And what this does is lead to what they call antibiotic-resistant bacteria. These are bacteria that no modern antibiotic can kill. And they leave the pig pens, leave the pig barns, and spread to humans. According to the CDC, about 13,000 Americans die every year from a bacterial infection that originated on a farm like this, that could have been cured 20, 30 years ago. but the bacteria are now resistant to the drugs. You think of things like typhus, diphtheria, scarlet fever, even minor surgery. That used to kill people. They were leading cause of death. They're all caused by bacteria. We don't even worry about it now. These barns, the waste, the smell, the gases that are blasted out, they're destroying the water. In Iowa, 3/4 of the water bodies are badly polluted from manure. The Pimlico Sound off North Carolina, another large pig raising state, billions of fish are killed in these annual fish kills caused by this pollution. And it's horrible for people who live near these farms. The stench, when they dispose of the manure, you can't hang your laundry out, you can't go outside, you can't work outside, you can't have a picnic outside. It's bad for your health. And after all that, a modern industrial pig doesn't even get a decent death. These big pig slaughterhouses can handle 30,000 pigs a day. That's a pig every 4 seconds gets killed, gutted, processed. And, it's bad for the pigs and it's bad for the meat. Because if the slaughterhouse employee can't take the time to do things properly and cleanly, every case. But some farmers, thank God, have not broken the ancient contract. There are some pigs that are still raised the old way. And just compare this next picture to what you've seen. You can raise a pig this way. These pigs happen to belong to a company called Nyman Ranch. Their meat is sold across the nation. And you can see, they're doing what pigs like. They've got friends, they can roam, they can root, they can run, these guys live in upstate New York. They're just, like I say, they're sociable animals. They love to root. They love the mud. They love to eat. The pig is truly, truly happy. They love life. Remember those females I showed, the sows in the crates? Well, here's how it looks when it's done on pasture. Very different. And it can be done. I mean, it's getting better. This sow and her piglets, there's no smell in the field. There's no pollution running off. She's never going to get an antibiotic that could create disease-resistant germs. She's never going to know the inside of a crate or stand on a hard cement floor with slats over her own excrement. She gets to exercise every single one of her piggy instincts. And if you've tried meat from a pastured pig, you know that there is no comparison as far as flavor and texture. Pork from a pasture-raised pig like this is incredible. It's just wonderful tasting. It's as different from a industrial pork chop as a winter tomato is from a nice summer tomato fresh off the vine. So, we really have a choice. You want this? You want this? You want this? Or this? Or that? What meat do you want to eat? Unfortunately, in Vermont, it's getting easier and easier and easier to get what I call well-raised pork, pigs like the ones you're looking at now. If you Google just simply pastured pork, Vermont, those words, you'll get lots of sites that will bounce up now or come up where there's farms in the state that are raising properly raised pork. You can get it at the city market in Burlington, both city markets, and you can get it at Healthy Living as well. In your own towns, a Maple Wind Farm in Richmond and Jericho Settlers Farm in Jericho all raise and sell pastured pork either directly or at farmers markets or through those stores that I just mentioned, the city market and Healthy Living. So the thing is, 5-10 years ago, you would probably have to own a pig in order to get this sort of pig. Now it's getting easier and easier. It's effortless. Try it once. I should have a warning, because if you try it once, you're going to have a very hard time going back to commercial pork. There's the flavor alone will do it. So after my 2 years of research, I'm glad to say that my wife and I still eat bacon, but we've become a lot pickier about what type of bacon we put in our pan. So thanks. I can take some questions if you have any. That's the... Hello?
Hi. Anybody have any questions? That was great, Barry. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
I was a little delayed getting on. How long do they normally keep the pigs in commercially raised barns?
It's amazing. A commercial pig goes from weighing about 3 pounds. You can comfortably hold it in the palm of your hand. To weighing, look at the size of those. They're newborns. About 3 pounds. To weighing close to 300 pounds, which is slaughter weight, in 5 to 6 months.
Okay.
A heritage pig of the sort that, like these guys, these are the ones that are typically raised on pasture, takes a little longer. Takes about 7 months, 8 months, depending, to reach that weight. Primarily because, hey, they move. If you move, you burn calories instead of packing on flesh. The thing about a pig is they're just so fecund. An industrial pig, one sow, will have 2 litters of piglets a year, with about 12 piglets surviving in each litter. So one sow will give you 24 piglets. Those piglets will become slaughter weight in 6 months and get ready to breed. The females that you keep are ready to breed in about 7. So you can see why they were, so important to like settlers, pigs. They're just so fecund, and nothing is that fast. What a cow takes 2 years or more, right?
Back in the middle 70s, late 70s, I raised pigs for a while. When I lived in Bolton, I had 3 acres, and I was fascinated how intelligent they were. Little aside, I had some that were about 2 months old, and we had a real bad downpour, and water was running all over. So I went out to where the pen was. I had a place where I had straw built up, and then I had a swinging door so they could go out in the yard and root around in the mud if they wanted to. And I was concerned because they were young and I didn't want them to drown. So I went out and looked. They had pushed dirt up against the door so that the water wouldn't come inside the shed where they were covered. And they were little. They were a lot of fun to play with too as they were growing up. But then come the fall, and my wife had been playing with the pigs, and now it came time to butcher, and that was tough.
Yeah, I also raised pigs, and it was almost impossible. I tried to discipline myself, be a hardball farmer, and the pigs almost wouldn't let you do that. You know, you'd come in to feed them, and they'd be pulling at your pant leg and joking around with you. So yeah, it was real hard when the day came that they had to go. Like I say, there is not a more intelligent domestic animal of any sort than a pig.
Nadine, you had a question?
Yes, because they are a domestic and can be domesticated, are there restrictions as to having one as a pet, like a dog or a cat?
I don't think there's any. Some states have tried to do that. Vermont, certainly not that I know of. The problem is that, as I said, pig is perfectly capable, any pig, but especially these pigs, of going off into the woods on its own and making a living and breeding. And so a lot of states have a horrendous problem of invasive populations of pigs. They're very destructive, wild pigs, boars, whatever you want to call them, but they look like boars. They look like that little black thing I showed you. And once they get loose, they're a horrible pest for farmers. And as I mentioned, they're champion at making more pigs. And they explode. Texas it's one of the biggest problems agriculture faces in the state of Texas is wild pigs. They're everywhere, and they can't control them. No matter what they do, the pigs you can shoot them from airplanes, trap them, whatever you want to do, chase them with dogs. They can't kill enough pigs to even not to cut the population back, but to stop it from surging in Texas. There are wild pigs in Vermont. They're not a problem, but they're here. Parts of New Hampshire have more problems with them, the feral pigs, but they're everywhere. They're in all 48 states, lower states. They're even wild pigs up in Saskatchewan, Canada, in the prairies. I mean, a place where the winters go down to 40 below zero commonly, and pigs are fine. They either burrow, they build like an igloo in a snowdrift. They just burrow in, set up shop. Or in the prairies where they grow wheat, they have the giant round bales of wheat stalks, like way bigger than the ones you see in our fields, our hay fields. And the pigs burrow into those, just root in and make themselves a nice little house like that and survive fine. And like I say, they reproduce faster than they can be controlled.
Barry, what do you think has led to it being easier to get pasteurized pork?
Pasture raised, yeah. I think it's all part of the growing awareness, particularly here in Vermont, of the value of non-industrial produced food, whether it's local produce, local farmers markets, and the pork just came along a little later because it's more involved, but it's the demand for that, meat without, that hasn't been exposed to a whole lifetime of antibiotics, that has eaten what it's supposed to eat, exercised normally. And so it's all part of that farmers market, local food movement that is. And like I say, the pastured pork should have a warning. It is more expensive than the industrial stuff, but it's very addictive. And especially if you remember pork from the 60s, 50s, excuse me, maybe the 70s, you'll recognize the flavor. You'll say, oh, that's what pork used to taste like. Not this sort of. So I think that's one explanation. And like I said earlier, pigs are very good for farmers because they reproduce so much, so often, so fast, and they grow so quickly. I mean, think about it. You're a small farmer, and you want to raise beef. Okay, you've got a cow, and she will give you 1, maybe 2 calves. And those calves have to live for around 2 years before they're slaughter weight. Or you could have a pig, and she'll give you probably 20 piglets a year, and those piglets will grow up within 6 months to be ready for market. So it's a good animal. They're a good animal for farmers as well as people.
Thank you. Barrett, you have a question.
Hi, Barry.
Hi.
First off, I'll let you know that I am in West Lafayette, Indiana, home of the Purdue Boilermakers.
Hey, that's great. Yeah, Candace Croney. I haven't talked to her in a few years, but she was great. She was the one who did the computer pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think she was put in charge of all livestock welfare for the university a few years ago.
And my question was, how useful are pigs in clearing land for farmers?
Boy, that's a good question. I don't know anyone who's used them for that purpose, but if you take a look at this picture that's up now, you can see the before and after, and that farmer moves his pigs every year, and it grows, comes back up again. But they're certainly they're like a bulldozer. Their snout, the way their snout, and it's got a plate of sort of cartilage behind it. It's like designed to be a very effective plow. You ever watch a pig rooting? I mean, it's incredible. They can pretty much go along as fast at a brisk walk with their heads buried in the ground, throwing up, a trough or creating a trough of dirt about 18 inches wide. So they're but I mean, I'm sure it could be done. It would be, they don't kill big trees, but for controlling underbrush and things like that, or this particular field, which would be taken over with, shrubs and grasses if the pigs were taken off.
I was just thinking about Western settlers getting out to the prairies. Instead of plowing right away, let the pigs go at it for a while. They're the vegetation.
Right. They called them corn on the hoof. So you take but I don't know. I haven't. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, they surely can. I mean, I was in Texas and saw what some wild pigs did to a field, and it looked like a World War I battlefield. Pits and holes and not a blade of grass. Except that farmer didn't want it to happen.
Are there any other questions? I can't see everyone, so just call out if you have a question.
I do. More a comment. Thank you for your most recent book as well. I finally figured out why I'm still hungry after I eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And
oh, you're right. Oh, the Just Eat book.
I changed my ways already.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And I really enjoy your writing. The prose is just gorgeous. after I read Pigtails, I went right online to see if you'd written anything else and snapped up Just Eat. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much. That means a lot to me. Believe me.
Well, if no one has any further questions, I guess we'll just say thank you, Barry. It's been great, and we really appreciate you coming to talk to us today. And you didn't even-
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Treat yourself to some pastured pork and see if I'm wrong.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you so